Rampersaud Show on Island Zone Radio on this beautiful Monday evening. Despite it's a little hot, it's all right. I have my little humidifier here that's blowing some cool air on me, which is good. Tonight we will be talking about adult bullying, cyberbullying to be very specific. I want you to share it with your friends, please do. It's something that's so prevalent in our community. But before I we start talking, I want to extend deepest sympathy to my family in Canada. My mother's first cousin passed away in Canada. His name is Terry Monish Polisar. It's strange that I came in contact with him via social media just about 2, 3 years ago, and we were supposed to meet. I don't think that I have ever met this young man. Um, but there were plans in the works that we should meet and talk about family and so on. Unfortunately, he passed away. So on behalf of my family, I'd like to extend to his family our deepest sympathy. So a sad world, and that's why it's important that when we are alive and we live for the now, we never get a second chance. I'll never get to meet him again. So that's where we stand. Oh, I see Dr. Narine Dat tune in, which is very good. Dr. Narine Dat looked very colorful there. Good to see him on. So, ladies and gentlemen, at last moment, I decided that, you know what, we have so much going on in our community and around the world. And so I've decided that I want to talk a little bit about bullying, but I want to be very specific. I want to talk about adult bullying. While I am not the in authority to talk about this more than our guest, I thought to myself, let me get him in studio so we could talk a little bit about this. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, again a very good evening to you. Welcome to the Ken Rampersaud Show, and thank you for joining us for another important discussion that affects individuals, families, and our communities, especially at this time. Things are really getting out of control. Tonight we are talking about a growing problem that is hurting people of all ages. And sometimes, to be honest with you, people don't realize the effect what it has on people. And that's cyberbullying. With the rise of social media and digital communication, bullying no longer ends when someone leaves school or at work. Today, hurtful comments, threatening rumors, harassment, and public humiliation can spread within seconds and remain online for many years or years to come. Sadly, adults are also becoming victims of cyberbullying, and the emotional impact can be devastating. Cyberbullying can contribute to anxiety, depression, social isolation, damaged reputation, broken relationships, absolutely, and in some cases, through self-esteem, and of course, thoughts of self-harm and suicide. That's why education, awareness, and community support are so important. And it's difficult. We are in a difficult position at this time. We have to call out some of the members in our community who are really bullying, who is the biggest bullying in our community. And I know that tonight we will draw some attention where some of the bullies will be watching, right? And that's why we can all do something to prevent it if we only understand what cyberbullying is and support those who are affected. To be honest with you, it makes it hard in this community to support those who are being bullied with what's going on. Whether you have personal experience or cyberbullying, know someone who has or simply wants to learn more, we encourage you to stay with us, ask your questions, and be a part of this important conversation. And so, Dr. Narine, that a very good evening to you. And I want to say thank you very much for coming on tonight. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. It's beautiful, obviously, out there. So I just did my walk with the kids and the wife, and here I am to talk about what's very important, actually.
Good, good. And it's something, we have talked about this before, but from Dr. Narine, that I see things are really getting out of hand. And like my hands are tied um, sometimes, and it shouldn't be, but because of my job, I have a lot of agency, and I have a lot of agency that's not monitoring me, but that's govern the way I practice nursing, mental health, and detox, and so on. So I'm sure that you have been paying attention of what's going on, especially in our community. What's your opening remark, Dr. Narine Dat? So what's your take before we go into cyberbullying? What's your take in all of this?
Well, first of all, as we know, we live in a digital world, right? And things are easy. Um, with just a touch of a button, there's so much, we can do. And sometimes people feel that they have an obligation to kind of get the point across on all of these types of things, and they're not necessarily give it some good thought, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But this whole bullying, it's a whole mess here in Canada as well. As we see it all the time, and and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And the fact that we are pausing today to kind of really address it, I think it's a good step forward for sure. But I honestly don't know what direction to take here because it becomes a huge problem. As soon as you turn that phone on, as soon as you turn the internet on, you see something happening, and I think it's very sad is not the right word. It's kind of very discouraging, to see certain things that's happening because as adults, as role models and so forth, we really have to set good examples for others to follow. And I like what you mentioned earlier. From a professional perspective, certain things you wouldn't do, right?
Right.
As a nurse, you wouldn't do because it's not we do not like people like apart from myself and whatnot, we wouldn't want to do anything against the code of ethics, things along the line. And I think it's very different when you're in that professional kind of role. And so, but we see it, and we are not saying that it is not attempting in any shape or form, but at the same time, we have morals. We want to be role models for folks to kind of follow, and we have to be the ones setting those examples without any
Yeah, I'm,
question.
I'm glad that you say that, so we can have a real open conversation, open dialogue. You said it right too, that despite we have governmental agencies that's govern us, but there is something that you call humanity, and there is something that we don't want to go against the grain. The other thing is that it is really sad what we are seeing, and I wonder if the adults who are in this bullying, if they're stopping to think that, listen, people have family, they have children. Also, they have their own morals. What's going on? Why is it so difficult to stop and think? Or I was asking too, where are your friends to tell you, listen, you need to stop what you're doing. You need to stop this nonsense. Where are you going with all of this? Why so much hate? And then we can go back and talk a little bit. And I'm just going to ask the question, and you don't have to answer, but I'm just
Mhm.
opening my thoughts. What happened to you as a child? Why did you feel so the passion inside of you to go and hurt people consistently for time and time again, years coming and year going, that you feel the need to continue? And guess what? It's spreading to Canada, as you said. It's to Guyana, to Trinidad, to Jamaica. Where are we really heading in a society? Before we start the discussion, I want to say a very good evening to Elaine Pooja, is watching all the way from Canada. And thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Please share this live with your friends and family. Now, Dr. Narine, that help us understand. I know that you have a doctorate in social work. I know you have experienced these kind of things. I know you hear it firsthand of what's going on. Now tell us, what is cyberbullying and how does it differ from typical bullying?
Good question, and it's a good way to kind of start the conversation here. So, long story short, basically, cyberbullying itself, is the use of digital technologies, as we know. So that's the phone, the tablet, and the computer and whatnot. Because as I mentioned earlier, we live in a digital world, right? So anything to do with email that's not appropriate, in terms of using it, to harass people, to threaten people, to embarrass people, anything basically that will cause people harm, right? Is a form of cyberbullying, and it can include simple things like spreading rumors. And believe it or not, these things does happen, right? People just spread rumors. um People do not necessarily take the time to kind of analyze what they've heard or seen, but they've kind of see it as an opportunity to kind of really make it more worse than what it is. And the difference really is really how we are using the technology at hand today, right? um, to really do the actual bullying, right? When people bully in the workplace, it's kind of a little bit different. Sometimes there are lots of side conversation, as you would know. You probably went to several meetings when you realize you probably disagree or whatever the case may be, and people do have those side conversation. At the end, end of the meetings or work, it still kind of happen. But in terms of this cyberbullying, the difference really is that it is instant. People do not really pause to really freely give their opinion. People kind of um, take full control. That you kind of take full control to really get their anger out and not really thinking of the backlash. And I think that's a dangerous thing. And I think if people were to really give it some good thought and really look at a bigger picture, knowing that even though the bullying it's happening by adults itself, we have to keep in mind as well that when it's out there, it's accessible to anybody, right? And so it becomes a harder thing when we have younger folks watching, because when people tend to watch certain things for a long time, in one sense it becomes a norm, right? And that becomes a real problem for sure.
You know, we're gonna play on this
Mhm.
Facebook today, but before I go, hi Leela, very good evening to you. And I know Leela is following this, what's going on a little bit. Also, we have Rhonda Spencer. Tom, a very good evening. You know, over the years that I've been working in psych, I've heard stories like hurt people. When people sometimes they bleed, hurt people bleed on other people. Dr. Narayan, that I got to be honest, and I'm very passionate about this. I have used my platform. I bring you on my platform. We sacrifice so much on our shows to make this world a better place, to let people understand that if you were hurt, if you were abused as a child in any kind of way, go get help, go get therapy. Don't bleed on people, don't hurt people. Dr. Narayan, that I'm going to call the shots. Tell me, what's your take on what I just said?
But keep in mind, I think you've kind of said it in such of a good way, um, because different people have different upbringing,
Right.
right? And so their experience will be very different than yours and mine and so forth. And believe it or not, a lot of adults spend a lot of time on social media, right? They meaning that it's not necessarily productive, and that can be a real problem. As I mentioned earlier, the instant access to communicate is a real problem, because people do not pause. They do not pause before they kind of make any kind of statement. But also, I think it's that lack of accountability as well too. People need to take accountability for their actions, and I think for some reason people feel that they're entitled to say what they want to say and thinking that it's okay. A lot of times you'll see that people will look for that one thing that that doesn't go so well in people's life. Like people can be doing so many different things in their lives for decades, and people wouldn't say anything. People wouldn't compliment people, but as soon as they see a downfall, not knowing what's happening in a person's life, people they use it as an opportunity. But I also think that it's a sense of weakness as well, too. It's a sense of weakness when people kind of behave that way, because people who are strong, not strong mentally per se, but people who are very knowledgeable, understand, the outcome of certain actions and so forth, will give some good thought, right? Will handle the situation very, very different. But for some reason, people who feel that they're entitled to say what they want to say without any sort of facts and so forth, it becomes a real problem. Not only a real problem for themselves, but a real problem for the broader community as well too, as we are seeing it all over the place. So this is not only in your community. This is not only in my community here per se. It's happening everywhere, and it seems to be a norm. And people, for some reason, people tend to participate in different ways. People love the temporary excitement of things along that line, and what that means is that they themselves are also contributing to the problem. That's my take on that.
Let's talk about Mala Harpersal. A very good evening to you. She is from Atlanta, Georgia. Ryan, DJ Fest, thank you very much. I see you doing big things. Good evening. Thank you very much. Sridat, good evening to you. Watching from Enmore. Let's go another thing. Dr. Narine, that I am going to not pull some information from you, but I'm going to share some of my information with you too
Absolutely.
and our audience. Now, I've been working in psych, mental health, um, for a long time. I have admit a lot of clients and I interview a lot of patients. One of the things that really bothers me is that some of our adults, listen, I'm not calling no name. Y'all don't come
Mm-hmm.
bash me tomorrow because you know what I'm saying? No, some of the adults have their children sitting, listening to them going back and forth, cursing, using all manner of languages. Now, from my experience in working in mental health and psychiatry, I have known and talked to many patients who have said, listen, I sat down and watched my parents do drugs. I sat down and watched my parents commit a lot of bad things, a lot of abuse, and so many other things in our household. They never spoke about it, but then years later, these things manifest themselves in life later on for these children. And I'm asking, oh God, I shouldn't be this upset, but I'm mad about this. Why are we misbehaving like this in front of our children? And we don't realize when we are dead and gone, our children will be in the same mess that we are in. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking each of you to stop this nonsense. Stop this bullying, or stop. If you want attention, buy a little dog and or a little cat or something. Dr. Narine, take it over, my friend.
So first of all, you're not upset. You're speaking with passion there, and I think it is important
Thank
for
you.
us to view it along that line. The reality is, as you and I, we both mentioned earlier, different people have different experiences growing up. Some people, they're not seeing it from the lens that you and I are looking at it, and that is a real problem, because in their mind there's nothing wrong is happening. In their mind they are doing everything right, but what's happening here is that nobody's really pausing to kind of break that cycle. And you've nailed it, and I have to say that I'm not by any way, in any shape or form, saying that I know it all, but I can confidently say that the fact that I work in mental health, this is what I do for a living, so to speak. I've kind of seen it all as well too, and it comes down to some sort of mental health issue. And I know it is a stigma. People might say, what the heck is he talking about, right? But the reality is, if people go, to do any sort of assessment, I can assure you something will come up for sure. Because normal people wouldn't behave a certain way. We getting upset. and saying something and regret it afterward is very different than the ongoing kind of bullying that we see constantly, where the flame keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and so forth. It's very different than when people have a bad day, right? Because all of us, we at some point will have a bad day. We all will kind of snap, and those are all normal things in life because a human being, we have those kinds of emotions and so forth, and it's gonna come out in some shape or form. But when it becomes an ongoing thing, but again, you and I can. The sad news is that you and I will never live to see real changes because study shows it takes a good 8 generations
Oh
before we
wow.
see real changes. And so, yes, people might be encouraged to take control of their life, but that doesn't mean that they can go and fix themselves. Just like that. It will take a long time. The hope is though that if people have kids and so forth involved and whatnot, it is a hope that the kids can break that cycle, right? But if we are not really, um, you know, preparing ourselves for that, then it becomes a real problem. Not only a real problem for the people who are involved per se, but for society as a whole as well too, right? Because keep in mind, these folks, will be in society, things of that sort. And they do not necessarily have to even be in society in that sense, because through social media, as we are talking about cyberbullying here, it's still affecting people in so many different ways. And I know hope is not a plan. Hope is not a plan, but it is my hope that if people were to look at themselves in the mirror and realize that, at the end of the day, the change starts with us. So that means is you and I, we have lots of work to do. So if I do my piece and if you do your piece and everybody do their piece, things can get a little bit better. But if I continuously, blaming you, for the same thing over and over, and you are doing the same thing to me, we're not getting anywhere. And I remember a long, long time ago, there was a gentleman said to me that, Narayan, if you want to separate sand and water, sometimes the best way to do it, or in fact, the best way to do it is to let it sit by itself, right? Because if you take a stick and you keep, storing that sand and
No,
water, you never will be able to kind of pour out that water from the sand. It will always be messy. So sometimes it's okay to just let it sit there for a while. If you want to sit, automatically you will be able to pour out that water. So that's one strategy there, but not everybody has what it takes to kind of do that. And that's the problem because for some reason, people have the tendency to where they want to respond, they do not give it some good thought. They just seek that opportunity to kind of respond. And if people don't think of it really, really well before they respond, it becomes a real problem. And these are all high end pieces I'm talking about here. A lot of people will disagree with you and I, but the reality is if people are, I'm not putting down anybody, any shape or form here, but if I think if people are able to, if people have some sort of, knowledge, they will realize that you know um, that they have the control to kind of make things better for sure. There's no question about that because I cannot change you. There's no doubt about that. You will have to kind of accept the fact that you are not perfect. I will have to accept the fact that I'm not perfect, and we do it that way. But if I continuously, as I mentioned earlier, continue to blame you, you continue to blame me, it becomes a real problem. And a lot of times, for some reason, we live in a world today, we live in a fantasy world. I think that's a fair statement where everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to have the last word. Everybody wants to prove that they're better than the other person and so forth, which is a real problem. And that's one of the reasons I always say to folks that if you ever want to compete with anybody, the best thing you can do is to compete with yourself because when you do that, you will always win, right? Because at the end of the day, we all, have our own things going on. We all walk at our own pace. So I can go on and on, but it's just suffer. I want to give you space to speak as well.
no, 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 no. I bring you on. No, 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 Doctor Narine, that I only bring you on because I believe that together, you in social work, I'm a nurse, and together we come as a radio host, we do a good job. We bring out what people don't understand, and you and I, because we came from poor background, and we rise up to the top. I mean, you got a doctorate and whatever it is, but we came to the top and we are stars. That's why we want people to listen. and so that we could be able to explain to people um, what we were saying. Good night to Miss Nicola Williams, all the way from Linden in Guyana. Mr. Stanley Ramsaran, a very good evening to you. My good friend Sabo Budram, good evening, all the way in Canada. I got a lot of Canadian here tonight. Elaine Pooja, a very good evening to you. She said lack of respect for others upbringing is a factor, and not lack of respect for others, lack of respect for themselves, because there are certain things would not come out of my mouth to say and to cuss a woman or whatever. I cannot believe this. Now, Dr. Narine, that why has cyberbullying become such a so common among adults? Why?
Sorry, you want to repeat that? I didn't hear you clearly.
Why has this become so commonplace now that every time we turn on Facebook, somebody talking or somebody cussing on each other?
Yeah. So the problem is nobody's doing anything about it. Right? And that's a real problem because the reality is it is not okay for people to cyberbully in any shape or form. Yes, people will make mistakes, and yes, people will operate in a blind spot. Some people do operate in a blind spot, meaning that they're not realizing that they are. But if people are intentionally doing it, that becomes a real problem, and people need to address it. And there are ways for people to address it. This is serious stuff. That's one of the reasons here in Canada there is the government made a law now. I mean, I disagree with certain things, but at the end of the day, the law is a law. So, and that's one of the reasons we do not see certain things when you folks post, believe it or not, because
Right, 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 right.
right. So people are probably thinking, hey, I'm not commenting or I'm not giving my viewpoint, but I cannot say it. They made a rule here that no articles and stuff can be shared and things of that sort for these kinds of reasons because you have they did a research and believe it or not you have more people posting negative stuff than the positive things, and so the government is trying to do to try to control it and manage it somehow because they have an obligation to make sure that society is safe, make sure that the community is safe and all of that. But the thing is nobody's doing anything, so people kind of just continue on, and a lot of times people see it as an opportunity as well too, right? People see it as an opportunity because they do not understand and know that quality will always overweigh quantity. They're not realizing that what you are doing here right now carries more weight, right? So people are looking for that short-term views and all of that. So as you know, anything that's vulgar and so forth, people will share it. I'm not
Yep.
sure what's behind it. That people will have no problem share it because there's something behind it. But when people start to do stuff of that sort, it becomes a bigger problem, and so it is very encouraging, right, for folks to continue it because people are watching, people are giving their 2 cents to it because they themselves are not taking the time to kind of analyze the situation. They just hear things and they take it for face value, and people continue it. It give them it fuel them in a different kind of way, which is a sad thing. It's just like when we had our last conversation a few weeks ago. Some people, well, if they're not feeling their greatest, they'll kind of look for a short-term solution. They'll probably, have a few drinks and things of that sort.
Right.
Um, right. And so it temporarily kind of does something for them. People go for a smoke and things of that sort. We know, you and I know that that's not a long-term solution. When people go there and they do their thing, it gives them a sense of satisfaction for sure. So even though the words, like you and I wouldn't do things of that sort, it gives them a sense of satisfaction. It's just like the pig. Let me put it this way. So if I was to take the pig out of that mud, and if I kind of shower that pig, right? That pig is not going to be happy. Like I'm going to be happy that the pig is nice and
Hmm.
clean, but the pig is
Hmm.
not happy. And one thing I learned in my life, and we all learn as we go along, you never want to play with a pig because for a couple reasons. There's first of all, the pig loves it and you will get dirty for sure. You will get muddy, right? But the
Yeah.
pig loves it. So that's one of the reasons. I guess my point there is that I will never try to do. those types of things, because first of all, it does not fit with my values. I want to make sure that I be an example for other folks to kind of follow, and I want to be a really good model, a really good role model. And I can confidently say that I'm not perfect in any shape or form, but I can say that I live my life in a way where, um, where people can, can say, look, these are kind of people I can put my trust on, kind of thing, right? First of all, forget about it, but educational pieces and so forth. At the end of the day, you have to carry yourself in a very professional manner. And when people don't have that piece, they really don't have nothing. Like that, I can tell you for sure. And this is not me judging anybody in any shape or form here, but that's what the reality. The only difference is that they're looking at the same situation from a whole different lens, and so your lens is very clean, right? So when you look
And
at it, you're able to see all of that. But if the lens is not clean, then it's a real problem, right? Yeah.
I just want to add, they said you if you're going crab dance, you will get mess, and that's what the story is, and that's why I don't associate myself too much with this. But I think what is strange to me, Dr. Narine, that is that the government or the police, they're not doing anything about all these things. Well, we're gonna wait until somebody kills somebody. And I tell you, the way I'm looking at things, somebody will kill somebody one day. Why are the police not doing something about this?
So first of all, I have to say that the police job is not an easy job. Like one police officer that I know personally, um, got shot and another one got killed. This is like very, very recent I'm talking about. And so the thing is, believe it or not, they have support just for the police officer. I'm speaking based on the Canadian piece here, because they themselves have very tough job and they deal with these kinds of things all the time. The thing is, in order for us to see those changes and so forth, people have to take it seriously and actually follow through with it. So this is not people, all of this back and forth fighting, and like where people just go on there and they get their point across and they're venting and so forth. First of all, it's a sense of weakness. There's no question about it. It's not no strength there. It's a sense of weakness. Um, um, People need to actually take it seriously and actually if and file complaints. Actually, it has to be done in that matter, so no police officer will automatically come and kind of do anything along that line. But if it's if, for example, if somebody were to do any sort of cyberbullying in a way where I feel like it's affecting me and affecting my character and all of those types of things and my daily functioning and all of that, I actually will be taking it seriously. There's no question about that, because it's important. I've seen even artists and so forth where people talk very negative things about an artist. I was surprised that that a male artist actually wrote so many negative things about a female artist. I could not believe what I was seeing. Is ridiculous what people
Yeah,
do. But that artist was very clear cut. She made it very clearly to her fans and say, I've got this address through my lawyer, so just hang in there, kind of thing. And all of the posts had to be removed and all of those types of things. But she took it seriously because she didn't want to damage her character just because of somebody who lives, like a lower life, let me put it that way. Because for me, no individual, especially a man, will do such thing to a female in particular in this kind of way. That's the lowest it gets. It doesn't get any lower than that.
yeah. And this leads to my next question. How can cyberbullying affect a person's mental health and emotional well-being?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. That
How
is
they sleep?
extremely,
How they sleep? How they wake up? What do they wake up with next morning?
absolutely. It affects them in the worst way possible. You know why? Because this is not a disagreement that you and I have when we are in this room and we are arguing with each other, or we are trying to solve it here. It's just not a little family kind of issue where you kind of, you just kind of let it slide or whatever the case may be. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people watch these things over
Oh yeah.
time, kind
Oh
of thing,
yeah.
right? It's embarrassing kind of thing. I know a lot of people personally had to reach out to me. In fact, I interviewed a few people, and people really had to reach out to me, and because they weren't sure what the topic was going to be and things of that sort. So people reach out and say, "Look, I saw an interview and all these types of things." So I said to them, this interview has absolutely nothing to do with you. You know, I mean, you know, and so because I never get in those kinds of mess because I don't live, I'm not in people's shoe. I don't have their experience, and so I cannot, get into any kind of mess and things of that sort. If I
Right, right, right,
recognize people are kind of attempting to do stuff of that sort, I quickly switch it back into something else because I'm aware of people try to do that, but it
right.
affects them in so many different ways. And I can tell you personally, apart from what this study shows, I can tell you like the things that people share, people are not themselves anymore because not that they're afraid, it's just that a lot of times people are being blamed for unnecessary things or false things and things of that sort. Honestly, I'm surprised that a lot of people are not in jail yet, to tell you the truth, because you have the right to live the life how you want to live your life. That is your choice, kind of thing. But I cannot tell you how to live your life, and I cannot just go on social media and kind of explain to everybody the world, what you have done and what you have not done, or all those kinds of things. That is the real problem. So I'm not sure how people are getting it mixed up, right? Where they feel that they have an obligation to do all of these types of things, um, right? Because it's, yes, they might get some sort of temporary satisfaction because they're putting somebody down, but keep in mind, if somebody's spending so much energy, right, to put somebody down, it means that their self-esteem has to be extremely low,
Mm,
because if people have to do all of that so that they have some sort of contentment, so that they have some sort of satisfaction, something is not right there at all, right? um, I personally have blocked people, things of that sort. I've helped so many people over the years, and I've had like the return has been amazing in different ways, because I always believe when you do good things will come back. But I find that there are people out there who, for whatever reason is, I'm not sure what's happening because I don't know it all. I find that there are people who, for some reason, when you're successful in your own way and whatnot, people do not like that, and they tend to kind of make a mess out of it. So for me, I don't let it get any more messy. I do not question people. I do not try to solve anything when I know that I have nothing to do with their thinking, something that they need to work on. I usually block people. I usually give them some advice and say like something does not seem right here. When you get it figured out, there's an open door policy here, but right now I cannot deal with you. That's the thing, right?
oh
Because
wow.
it is not my job to kind of fix people, and it's not people's job to fix me too. And sometimes I give it some good thought, but I find that when people are really pushing it and really twisting it into something else, then it becomes a big problem for me. And I have a different kind of life where I always have goals and dreams in life. So I always work towards different things. So I never waste my time with people who have no desires in life, who are just floating around and just surviving kind of thing. So I never put my energy there. I just accept it for what it is. And I realize that I do not have the time and energy for that. And I just kind of move on because there are so many people in the world. I know that people change from time to time, for different reasons and so forth. And we have to accept all of that. But that doesn't mean that you and I or people should be dealing with it. That's the issue.
You know, Dr. Narine, that while you were talking, something just a light bulb went off my head, and I was like, they're probably happy, they're feeling good when they're cursing and they're on Facebook doing all these lives. But one has to wonder what, when they are by themselves, what they are thinking, what their life like in that room locked up. Because guess what? They don't have an audience then. So they're probably feeling very depressed or lonely, right? What's your take?
Not Yes, not probably. They are, because once they shut off that life, they don't have the life after that.
Right, right, right. Exactly so.
Right. And so sorry that I'm laughing about it, but I do feel bad as well too, because at the same time, people do go through a lot of things. And I'm very fortunate and grateful for that. I'm so fortunate and blessed that I have so many people in my circle that I can reach out to. They're right at my fingertips, all kinds of people. And that's a gift that I have, and vice versa. Like people reach out to me for so many different things. I have a situation right now where somebody is dealing with a debt and things of that sort, and I'm trying to guide them along and all of that. and that's all. Um, but not many people have that. So the only thing people have is this whole Facebook, social media thing. So have they live in a fantasy world. So they think that they're coming to Facebook to get their problem solved. They're not realizing that they're causing more problem, not only problem for themselves, but they're really putting a bad name really to people in their own circle, things along that line. And I'm not sure how, and I guess it's a gift, in a different way too, to give them some credit. Some people have jobs and so forth. I'm not sure how people go to their job knowing that this is what they kind of do here. I've seen like teachers and so forth in Guyana. They course out, they do little things
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
so forth, and then they go and they teach. I'm not understanding it and so forth. How people do it. And again, it is easy for us to be judgmental, and I have to be mindful of that because I'm not in their shoe. But something this is not right, and that's what you and I are trying to figure out here. So we are not trying to solve anybody's problem here, but what we are saying here is that something is not right there. Like this doesn't make any sense at all, right? And so that's what we are trying to figure out. But you brought up a good point. People are very lonely. In fact, one individual in New York, actually, I see them free service I'm doing. I charge I charge sometimes $210 for 50-minute session, But
All right.
I've been seeing an individual in New York City every morning, free session I give them because they are at a point where they kind of need it. And I know the individual really, really well. And it's my honor to offer that support to the individual. So I think, if people get to that point where that, look, I cannot continue my life this way. I have to start to make a change, and the change starts with me. I think that's a good place to start. But so my point to you is that people are very lonely, and you will never know that this individual is going through such of a tough time in life because this individual, have like a professional job, and all of these types of things, and looks really, good from the outside and all of that, but very lonely and broken from the inside. But the fact that they have the trust in me to kind of really try to repair what's happening, for folks who know me, I always put people before profit. And so for me, it's not even a question about, money and all of that because money comes and goes. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm able to kind of, offer that service to the individual. Yes, they can go for services, obviously, in New York as well, too. But as you would know, once you build good rapport with people and so forth, it makes a huge difference. And so, yes, so to come back to what you've said, people do go through a tough time. Um, you know, as a whole, we live in a very challenging time as well, too. Because you think about it, if people are busy doing good things in life, they won't have time for all of these things, right? And the fact that we are seeing it, something is not right. They're trying to fill a void. There's something they're trying to fulfill, and maybe one day we'll have to do a deep research on this so that we understand it. I would love to maybe interview, people with structured questions in a form of research
Mm-hmm.
where we can kind of understand and come up with some sort of solution as to why these things happen, why is it people do it, are the different people when they off the camera, things of that sort, right?
Yeah, I am sure that we all could do something a little bit, and that's why I use my time sometimes when I have clients in front of me to really find out why they behave the way they do. And it's sad that some people sometimes don't care. They don't care what tomorrow brings for them. And this is why sometimes I say you cannot follow up on people because those who in life doesn't have nothing to lose don't care anything. But you are the one who have something to lose. You have to be very careful. You know how you do things. What warning signs suggest that someone may be experiencing cyberbullying?
Cool. So I mean, so the warning sign will be things that we kind of talked about. So obviously, if somebody has always been, cheerful and always active in society and doing well at their job, and functioning well, within their family circle and so forth, and all of a sudden, they've been cyber or bullied by somebody, right? They wouldn't be the same person anymore. Like I've witnessed it from people where they've kind of shared with me. People were like shaking kind of thing, right? And so people, well, apart from the things that we can see when having conversation, but it will be things that we talked about, and it's worth mentioning again. People will not have the interest of doing certain things in life again because they're so not caught up, but that cyberbullying has really affected them so much. They can even have panic attack, all side of things. So, for example, if they receive a message, from the same person and so forth, it could be a good message, but as soon as they see a message from that person, they're kind of, they got that
Right.
that 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 instant anxiety and thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, what could it be, right? And so people can withdraw from society as a whole. And keep in mind too, when these things happen, so many things go wrong. So for example, when you're driving and then let's say for some reason you're out of gas, that's just the gas, but the
Yeah.
car wouldn't move anymore. The
Right.
car
Right.
cannot move, so right? So forth, right? So it affects. So in this case, in terms of the additional stress and so forth, it will affect your, relationship, right? It affect your relationship because you might not be yourself, and people will, and believe it or not, people will start to recognize it. People will start to see it. People will start to recognize, notice the difference. You might not be able to communicate the way you normally would. You might come across very differently. You might come across as if you're angry and upset and so forth. And people might take it differently, thinking that you're upset on them and things of that sort. And it becomes a whole different mess. And it's not an easy fix. So we need to get to the root cause of it. And so the best, I mean, and I'm sure that might be more of a closing remarks, but I would suggest to folks that to kind of be mindful and to kind of look into the mirror and kind of ask yourself, what is it that you can do to kind of be part of the solution, right? And so let's say you're one of those who normally hit the share button when you see something interesting in terms of the cyberbullying, people talking about each other, all of these types of thing in a negative way. Consider not sharing. People have to boycott these kinds of thing. Very difficult to do because it's entertainment for some people,
Right.
and
Right.
if people, it's entertainment. It's not it's not more than that, but they're all kind of different entertainment. And I think entertainment is one thing, but when it comes to framing people and kind of thinking that people have the right to come and just talk about you and all of these types of things, that becomes a real problem, right? And that's something we cannot accept, and that's something we cannot let it be a norm. That's for sure.
Dr. Narine, that why do some people? Just have one more question for you. But why do you think that people choose to bully in this world? This is a world that God has blessed us with, that to live a productive life, to live a life with purpose. Why do they choose to be a bully?
Oh, yes, so that's a heavy question because I don't think people necessarily choose to be a bully or whatnot, but I think for some people, they're looking for attention. Some people like that. Some people, and these things does happen. It happens. I'm a very high motivated individual, and so, but I have to be mindful of the people I have in my circle as well too, because I want people to kind of support me. So, for example, when
Yes,
I'm going to when I'm going to receive these awards and so
yeah,
forth, I'm inviting specific folks to join me so that they can celebrate with me,
yeah.
right? But if I find that people are thinking that they should be the one receiving the
Right,
award,
right, right,
and right then I'm thinking to myself that maybe they should not be joining me, right? I'm
right.
saying, right, right, and so I think attention, like as we mentioned earlier, that loneliness, and so people come now and they go there now and have some sort of satisfaction. But if people are using, we are not, and don't misunderstand me here, I'm not in any shape or form saying that people are using drugs and so forth, but people do. And so if people are not their normal self and so forth, like it's easier for people to do that, right? Because they are in a different kind of mode. They're thinking, and at that time is very, very different. Even though they're not seeing it at the moment and so forth. And so sometimes they might not have a plan to do something as such, but they're probably drinking and they're probably, using some sort of drugs and so forth as well. To which I've seen because I working, in addiction treatment center where people, had, some sort of addiction, whether that be drinking or smoking and whatnot. I have a good sense of the signs and so forth. And so when people speak, I honestly, certain things that I hear, I'm thinking to myself that I'm so blessed to kind of brought up so nicely, um, because certain things just doesn't make sense to me at all. And again, that has a lot to do with my own upbringing. A lot of people, they brought up differently, so they see certain things as a norm. And I think that's something I'm learning to adopt, in the sense that as a social worker, I meet people where they're at, so people can function how they want. They can choose to drink and whatnot, do whatever they want. I will never judge people that way. But when it comes to abusing, and kind of do like things like this cyberbullying that we're talking about here, I honestly do have a problem with that, right? Because yes, people have a choice to live their life, but if it's affecting people, if it's affecting society, right? Then that's a real problem. But like I said, people do it for a whole different reason. People have joy, and and if people who are looking for views and all these types of things, in their mind, the more views, what they're not realizing, the more views you have there for something like that, the deeper, they get into like a darker hole. But they're not seeing that way. If it's something good, where it's educational, and it's high views, those are good reasons to kind of continue on, because you're making a positive impact here, kind of thing, right? So people, they're very shallow, um, and so they're not really living for a real purpose, kind of thing. They don't realize that there's so much more that life can kind of offer.
Come on, yeah.
They're looking for easy fix. They're not realizing that there's so much more out there, but it it calls for a lot of hard work. Nobody wants to do that, right? Nobody wants to work hard, right? People looking for something easy, and you try to do a research, and go online, and try to read some research result or something. Nobody will be watching, right? But you turn on a thing and kind of,
Cause up.
let go, do some cussing up and so forth. That number will be well, number is going to go up, right? But
Nope.
again, we have to come to reality that the quality will always overweigh the quantity, and right, in the long run. And so people will never win that way, for sure. It's just a temporary thing. Give them that temporary short-term satisfaction, not more than that.
Dr. Narine, that my final question to you before we close off tonight's show. I'm surprised we're heading to 9 o'clock now, but my final question to you is, and I know that one of the bully will be watching tonight. How do, or so watch later on, Dr. Narine, that if you were to sit down in a clinical setting on one sofa and you have the bully on the other sofa, what your conversation would be like? Would you encourage them to stop? Would you try to tell them of some of the negative things that going to happen or could happen? How would you advise them in that clinical setting? Take it away, Dr. Narayan.
Yes. So I basically, from a professional standpoint here, I will give them lots of different options. And I actually will celebrate some of the good things that they've done in their life. So I wouldn't kind of, just focus on that, on the one piece that's not going so well, kind of thing. I will kind of get to know them, obviously, and I kind of show them, some benefits if they were to continue along that path. Because that's a skill set. I'm sure you do too, person like myself, that a skill set we have to kind of, if I was to have one of those folks with me, I will kind of dive deep to look for something really good in their life, and kind of massage, use that as something that I can kind of massage and kind of let it glow and let it sit, because sometimes they themselves probably don't know that they have other capabilities and things along that line. I think that's going to be the first few sessions will be along that way, because I'm more of a solution focused kind of individual, and I think you know where I'm going here. I'm more strength focused, And so I will kind of really highlight all of their strengths and things of that sort. I kind of focus there, kind of thing. And I think eventually, once the person realizes that, look, um, I, I had no idea, and I hear it every day because this individual that I'm seeing every day, actually from New York,
Hmm.
I pinpoint all the good things and all the strength that they have and all the capabilities in a life in their life. And you know what the individual said to me? That nobody has ever told them that. They
Right,
did not know that they're capable to do that. Nobody told them
right,
that.
right,
And so I wouldn't really hammer out, just the bullying piece and so forth. And one because I can tell you with confidence that all the people who may have bullied, in some shape or form, obviously some people overdo it. Without any question, I'm very confident that they have so much more to offer, kind of thing. But I think um, we may fail in different ways to kind of let them know that as well too, because not everybody is aware of their own capabilities. So people think that this is all they can do, this is all they're capable of doing. And I think that for me, like, my treatment plan will be to focus on that first, so that they see, so that eventually they will come back to me and say, Narayan, I do not want to live my life this is not me, this is not how I want to live my life. I want to get back to the real me, because I don't think anybody in their right mind will want to live their life that way. Who the heck will want to kind of wake up, and kind of live their life in that kind of way and have like only negative energy? They have lots of energy, but it's negative energy, right? And that's
yeah,
that's a real problem. So I will really focus on that kind of thing, and so try to really put that whole cyberbullying into the shadow. And I'm trained in CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the things I do in all of my sessions is the five factor model, where for folks who don't know, basically we look at the same situation, but we look at it from two different lenses. And so a lot of people, they've never gone through that exercise, right? Because they always look at it from the one lens. And so if I was to ask them, why is it that you do that, for example? People say, well, I do that because they're doing it to me, and I can't let them to take advantage of me and so forth, because they're looking at it from a very dark lens, right? And that's okay. So that's the first part of the exercise. And the second part of the exercise is that we look at the same thing, but we look at it from a very clean lens. And it takes a little bit of effort, it takes a little bit of thinking from their end. But they never get that kind of exposure and experience, and never had those kinds of conversation, right? And then when they see it from a whole different lens, they're preparing themselves for any kind of situation. So basically, what it is like a shield. Regardless of what comes their way, they will be able to use that technique to shield themselves, and they do not have to be involved, that they don't have to do any of that. And so I like the fact that you mentioned, if they were to be with me, what you meant by that there is seeking help, really, which can be hard to do because they're not seeing it that way. But if was to have that opportunity, which I do, by the way, in so many different ways, and I can tell you, when people leave me, not that I'm perfect and that I'm the best person there, but I can tell you, I can see the change in them. And one good skill set that I have is that I have what it takes to really highlight that, so that they can see that, because most of the time they do not see that, and that's a real problem. And so I hope I have those kinds of opportunities. I hope people are watching, and if they get stuck, I hope they reach out again. I'll be very pleased to kind of kind of go through that process, and I hope that they can come back on this show and say, you know what, love, I did not know any other way, to kind of deal with that, and this is how I was doing it. But I kind of took a step back. I watched your show and I realized that I have what it takes to be the change that I want to see. I hope we can have some of that. And if we have that, if it's one person, it means that you've done your job here tonight. And I'm very proud of you to really take a stand in this. Um, Not too many people want to have these kinds of conversation because it's difficult. It's difficult. You cannot bring Tom, Dick, and Harry to have this kind of conversation
not
here.
at all.
It has to be real people, real knowledge, and I think that's what makes the real difference here.
Yes, thank you very much. Um, the beautiful Miss Girly Prasad Kanchan watching all the way from Florida. Thank you very much for your love support. To my sister Gigi, if you're still watching, my dear darling, thank you very much for watching. And ladies and gentlemen, you know, Dr. Narine Dat has his own show. Support him to watch his show. Gigi, she's an author too. Dr. Narine Dat is an author. Both of them I regard as highly as it could get. I love both of them. Watch the Gigi show. And it's good to have Roy Lachman watching all the way from Durban, South Africa. Well, I am so glad, Roy, that you tune in. And do me a favor, just share it with your friends and family in South Africa so that we can continue to grow. And the beautiful Hafiza Khan. Well, Dr. Narayan, that I really don't say these things, but I'll tell you, you probably heard of the story in Schenectady recently, with the cussing out story and so on. So I was behind the scene trying to quell things, and I was talking to one set of the family, and I'm so glad to say that, knock on wood, that they are quiet. Nobody's cussing out each other, and things are quiet. I'm happy and proud of that one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, let me close by saying that God has blessed, and tonight we are talking about cyberbullying, adult cyberbullying. And I don't know what my next word going to be, but I am hoping that God will throw some nice words to me. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are talking about cyberbullying adult, let us realize that this journey that we have and this thing that we call life is just a passing through. And that you will wake up tomorrow morning with a thought of knowing that I don't know what tomorrow will bring for me, but I'll aspire to live a good life. And that I'll change from being that bully to being someone who could mend. And if any of you would want to have a conversation, I'm ready to pay for dinner. So we could trash this out, we could have a conversation, and to do it peacefully and quietly. Sometimes you have to lose to win. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're a bully and listening to me, I want you to think of your children. But first of all, think about yourself. Think about your children. Think about your brother, your father, your mother, your sister, your friends. How you feel when you look in the mirror, ladies and gentlemen? And this message is for the bully. Stop. This is not what life is all about. Life is a beautiful thing, but you have to invest your energy into positivity. Listen, I came from a poor family just like Dr. Narine Dat. But because I choose to live a humble life, and because I choose to live a life of purpose and living a life with intention, I see God's blessing every day. Every day I wake up, I thank God for life. I thank God for my wife, my children, that God would bless all of us. I am thankful because when the day comes, none of you will know what tomorrow brings and what legacy do you want to live. As we can see so many young people dying in this world. Ladies and gentlemen, please consider what I'm saying. Life is short and it's beautiful, and how you make your bed, you can lay on it. Dr. Narine, do you want to say anything else? If not, we'll have to say good night. And I love every one of you, and I give God the praise for being a beautiful human being. Dr. Narine.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for kind of doing a show on this topic. I think it's important. I think you've kind of said it nicely, but I want to remind folks that if somebody was to reach out to you, keep in mind that listening does not mean agreeing. I've been in many conversations, many situations where people are saying a lot of things, and believe it or not, I do not necessarily agree with everything that they're saying,
Right?
but I do listen. And so sometimes all people need is somebody to kind of
Yeah.
listen, right? But if we are listening to respond, then that's not getting us anywhere. And that's difficult to explore. Even myself, I'm practicing to kind of hold
Right.
on, let them speak, let
Yes.
it go. And even though I'm attempting, and sometimes my coworkers can recognize in me too, and all right, I could tell you wanted to say
Yeah.
something, But I've kind of, you want to make sure you give people that opportunity to speak, and at the end, when they're done, you want to kind of confirm that they're done and say, "Hey, are you done?" Or whatever the case may be, and then you can say, "Look, I want to respond to that, and you can do that." But do know that you and I have the power to do that. As you know, I find it troublesome when it's a grown person, doing the bullying. That's a real
Yeah.
problem, and I think if we don't have these kinds of conversation, we will think it's normal. But I think if people continue along this line, it means that we are supporting it and we are agreeing with it, and that's another problem. And the fact that we have done this here today, I think that the message is clear that we are saying that, hey, we cannot continue along this line. It's not good for themselves. It's not good for the community. It's not good for people in general, and we really have to kind of start making those changes. I hope that people rethink things. I don't think that they have to win all the time. You've said it. You've said it nicely. I love winning. By the way, winning feels really really nice. But I also know that losing and failure and not having the last word in life or any sort of conversation is all part of life's journey. And sometimes it's okay to kind of be that person that didn't win or didn't have the opportunity to kind of have your last say and so forth, because at the end of it all, a lot of good things comes out of it as well too. But if people have the tendency to always have the last word, and that becomes a real problem, because that's how you have that ongoing kind of conversation, and people kind of people go in groups. I'm not sure if you're seeing it, but people are actually going in groups as well to kind of attack people. When it gets to that point, that becomes a big problem. But again, I want to thank you, and I thank folks for watching. But if you're watching, if you can do one thing, if you can hit that share button, so that more people can kind of get this message, that's going to be all that we're asking for. So thank so much again. I'm on vacation,
Oh,
by the way. I'm Ken, just so you know.
wow.
So I'm taking the girls, out of the place, and so tomorrow we have some stuff planned and whatnot. But thank you so much, and we will do this again, and we'll do the important pieces. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again.
And to everyone that's watching, thank you very much for watching the Ken Rampersaud Show and Dr. Narine Dat. I really appreciate you coming on here from Canada and that we could make a difference in our community. Have a great night, everyone, and say no to bullying. Good evening.